Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Drills, and today we're going to be bringing out the highly anticipated, long waited, fully updated 2025 new version of the full chain tutorial. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so first we're going to be running through the programs we're going to need for this tutorial. I suggest you go and get these programs, get them plugged in and have them all fully working before we get going. Now, the first program we're obviously going to need is Blender. We're going to be using Blender 4.0 and we're going to need the Solemns plugin. Now, if you don't have the Solemns plugin, if you don't have Blender, if you need to get that installed onto Blender, then go and watch this tutorial I've already made that will show you how to do that, and then come back to this video. Next, we're going to be using the program Inkscape. Now, Inkscape is for turning PNGs into SVGs, which is going to allow us to basically turn flat images into 3D models. Now, I do need to swap these around because I'm going to be running through these in order. So we're going to be using Photoshop before we use Inkscape. So yeah, Photoshop, you're going to need that. If not, you can of course go and get an alternative like Photopea or whatever, but I highly suggest you use Photoshop if possible. And then, like I said, we're going to be moving on to Inkscape. After Inkscape's all said and done, we're going to be exporting and going into 3ds Max. Now for 3ds Max, you're going to need the GIMP's Evo plugin. Again, I've made another tutorial, so go and check this tutorial out if you haven't already got that installed, and then come back to this video once you have. Next, we're going to be using OpenIV. Again, in the initial tutorial I showed you, if you haven't got OpenIV, this tutorial will show you how to download and install all the tools you need going forward. And last but not least, we're going to need some type of test server. We're obviously going to need FiveM. Now, if you're just giving this chain to a server that you're going to be importing into, you might not need a test server, but I strongly suggest you go and follow this tutorial, make your own test server, and then come back to the video. Now, once that's all done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up Blender. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to delete everything in your scene. You're going to want to hit A and X. You're probably going to have some stuff in your scene, but I've set mine up differently. But yeah, just hit A to select all, hit X to delete, and you'll have a blank screen. Next, we're going to add a mesh cube. So we're going to do Shift and A. We're going to go to mesh and we're going to add a cube. This is going to be our basis. Now, you might be thinking my cube looks different to yours. The reason is because I've changed the shading. Now, if you come up here, you're going to be able to fiddle around with stuff, make it look different, and basically get a different type of look to Blender if you wish to do that. Now, to change the background colors, like the colors of the lines and the color beneath it and stuff like that, we're going to come up here, we're going to go to edit, we're going to go to preferences, and we're going to go under themes. If you go through all of these, you'll have different selections to change different things, and you can just fiddle around with it and get it how you like it. But yeah, back to the actual video. So I'm going to show you a couple of basic buttons if you don't know already. So the first one we're going to do, we're going to press S, and that's going to scale. That's going to change the size of the model. If we hit R, we're going to be able to rotate. Of course, Control and Z will undo anything you've done. And if you hit G, we're going to be able to grab things and move them around. Nah, we're not going to want to do none of that straight away. The only thing we are going to want to use is the scale. So you'll see up here you've got different axes. You've got Z axis, X axis and Y axis. They correspond to the lines that are on the grid. Now, if we want to scale the Z axis, we're going to hit S then Z, and we're going to scale, and it's just going to scale downwards like so. Now next we're going to want to make this thinner, so we're going to hit S for scale and X for the X axis. Now if you come up to your toolbar and you click the move, we're going to be able to move this along using the axis. Just like so. And if you come up to the gimbal and click different letters, then you'll look at it from different views. These are called orthopedic views. I'm going to look at it from the Z axis, and I'm going to try and use the grid to kind of get the shape I want. So I want it to be slightly longer, so I'm going to hit S for scale and then Y for the Y axis. And then I'm just going to extend it to where I want it to be. Now it's totally up to you how you make your chain links. I'm just going to be showing you a basic one for today. I'm just going to be tweaking this, moving it along different axes, shaping it, etc. And we're just going to make a basic chain link. I'm just going to pull this up so it's above the grid, so you haven't got the grid lines going through it. That way it's just easier to see. Now, if you hit tab, you're going to go between edit mode and object mode. You can change it up here, but if you hit tab, that's the shortcut for that. We're going to be doing this a lot. Now we're going to go into edit mode and we're going to use Control and R and we're going to create a loop cut. Once we do that, if we move our mouse, we'll see this yellow line. Now, if we click on this yellow line and then click on it again without moving our mouse, it will lock it into position. So we're going to add one horizontal line and then we're going to add a vertical one and scroll our mouse wheel. So we've got 3 lines and then we're going to click it in again. Now, if you only clicked it once and moved it, you would be able to reposition the line like this, but we actually want them to be symmetrical. So that's why we're double clicking them in. If you look up here, you've got 3 selections. You've got your vertices, which is the dots. You've got your edges, which are the lines that connect the dots. And then you've got your faces, which are the whole face that the lines create. Now, we're going to be using different ones, so it's good to know that for now. But for now, we're going to use faces. We're going to shift select these 2 so we can select 2 at once. And then we're going to hit E to extrude. We're going to pull these faces out like so. And we're just going to look at it from some different angles. We will be doing this a lot. You want to look at it from square on angles. You might want to look at it from side angles. And you constantly want to be checking your angles. Alright, so next we're going to add a modifier. So if we come down here and click on the wrench, we're going to get to our modifiers tab. And under this tab, we're going to be able to add modifier. There's going to be a whole bunch of modifiers, but we're going to look for the mirror modifier. Now, when we add the mirror modifier, you can see it doesn't look how we expect it to. And the reason is because the origin is not to the 3D cursor. Now, this little orange dot is called the origin, which is basically at the moment the center of the object. And we want to move it to the 3D cursor. So if we right click our mouse, actually we need to tab back into object mode, right click our mouse and go to set origin and then do set origin to 3D cursor. That's going to move the center of the object to the middle of the grid. Now if we go and add our mirror modifier, we're going to get the achieved result, which is what we want. We're going to make sure to turn on clipping, and that basically means if it overlaps that it's not going to cause any mesh clashes. It will basically just merge them into one. So if I move this line, it's not going to affect it because we've got clipping enabled. Now, if I go into edit mode and I select all and I move, you're going to see that it stretches out. Now if I was to go back into object mode and move the same thing, you're going to see that it moves the whole object. So it's quite important to understand these when you're modeling. Alright, so we're going to go back into edit mode and we're going to turn on this. This is the X-ray mode. Now you see the blue dot in the middle of each face. That is basically the middle of that face. So if we select these 6 faces, which we can do because we've gone into X-ray mode, we're going to be able to delete them all at once. So we're going to hit X and we're going to delete faces, and then we're going to turn off X-ray mode, and there you go. We've created a pass-through for our link. Now obviously there's holes in this model and we're going to want to fix that. So we're going to turn off our mirror modifier for now. And we're going to select vertices mode. Now I'm going to select 1 vertice, 2 vertices, 3 vertices, 4 vertices. I'm going to go in the middle and press F. That's going to create a face. And I'm going to repeat the process for each set of 4 vertices so that we fill in the whole gap. So 1, 2, 3, 4, hit F, there we got a face, and then just make sure to let go of shift in between doing these, otherwise you'll end up selecting all of them and we don't want that. And there we go, we no longer have any holes in our model. Now, we do really want to get rid of these 2 faces here because they're going to be inside the model and we don't need them at all. So basically we're going to unhide the mirror modifier, we're going to look at it, and everything's looking pretty good up until now. Next we're going to give the link a bit more definition, so we're going to turn back on X-ray mode. This time we're going to select vertices mode. We're going to grab these 4 vertex and we're going to move them down. For the record, vertex is the single version of vertices and vertices is plural, so I might say one or the other, but they're basically going to mean the same thing. Now once we've done that, I'm going to look at this on the top. Again, I'm going to select X-ray mode and I'm going to move this out roughly around 1 box if you look at the grid, and then I'm going to do the same on this side. This is why I try to make it quite symmetrical with the grid, so that when I do stuff like this, it's easy to gauge how much to move it. Right, this time we're going to be doing a reverse scale. So we're going to select all of these faces on this side, and what we're going to do is we're going to basically scale it on everything apart from the Z axis. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to hit S for scale, and then we're going to do Shift and Z. And that's going to scale it on the Y and the X axis, but not the Z axis. And it's going to give us something that looks like this, which is kind of what we're looking for. Again, always make sure you're checking, looking around, just making sure there's no gaps or any defaults, so you haven't got anything wrong, because if you mess something up now, it might be really hard to come back later and fix. It's better to fix it when the problem's there. Now, I'm quite happy with how this link is looking. I do want to put a little bit more definition in the top, but for the main shape, it's pretty good. So what we're going to do, we're going to select these 4 faces. We need to make sure we're on faces mode. Select these 4 faces. We're going to hit I. This time is for inset. This is going to bring it in like so. Now you will see whenever you use one of these type of tools that you'll get this little box down here. If you click on it, you're going to have like multiple options. If you go through these options, you'll turn them on and off and just mess around with them, find out what things do. And if your desired result is not exactly how it is, messing with some of these things sometimes might fix that for you. So yeah, just get to know the program, get to play with things and stuff like that. But yeah, that's not looking too bad. So we're going to select the inner faces and we're basically going to extrude them, but we're going to, so it's E for extrude, and then we're actually going to extrude them inwards. So really we're going to intrude them, but it is E for extrude. Now if yours goes a bit funny like this to begin with, then hit Z to make sure we're locked in on the Z axis. That's just giving us a little bit of inset, so if we want to put some diamond texture in there or something, it will look a little bit more realistic than just being on a flat surface. So once we're happy, we're going to click this drop down box and we're going to click apply on our modifier, and that's going to lock the modifier in. So this is no longer mirrored, this is now one solid object. And then we're going to need to rotate this by 45 degrees. So we're going to do R for rotate, we're going to click Z so it sticks to the Z axis, and we're going to do 45 and then hit enter. After we've done this, we're going to need to apply the transformation. So we're going to hit Control and A, and we're going to click on all transforms. Next we're going to add an array modifier, and this is basically going to duplicate. Now if we move the factor X, it's going to set the position of our links. Now we're going to need to tweak this to get it just to the right amount, and then obviously if we turn up the count, then it's going to have more links. Now this is basically our chain made. The only thing is we do need to go back and UV map it, otherwise we're going to have to basically do every link individually. So we're going to do one link at the beginning, and that's basically going to duplicate the UV map for the rest of the chain. So I'm just going to Control Z until I go back to this position. Then I'm going to select a UV editing tab. Alright, so I'm going to select all by hitting A, and I'm going to do cube projection at first. Now if you come on the left, this is our UV map. We're going to scale and move things over here. However, I do find that this is far too small, so we're going to need some more area to work with for the texture. So we're going to create a new map, and we're going to change this to 2048, and then change the height to 2048 as well. And you could change the color. I'm just going to leave this black for now, it's not going to matter in the long run. We're going to hit OK, we're going to scroll out, and now you're going to see we've got a bit more area to play with. So what I actually want to do is I want to separate the diamond part. So I'm going to select these parts, and because I'm looking bang on from the Z view, I'm going to do project from view, and that's going to give us a nice angle to put some diamond texture on in a little while. I'm going to move these a little bit closer together, and I'm just going to put them somewhere on the UV map for now. Perfect. And it's just about creating it in a way that you're going to be able to put a texture on here, and you're going to have gaps between them so that textures don't leak onto the other item and stuff like that. Now if we select this mode, this will actually be our texture view, so if there was a texture on it, which there isn't right now, we would be able to see that. Otherwise it would just be grayscaled like this. So we're going to rotate that by 45 degrees on the Z axis again and apply all transformations. Then we're going to re-add the array modifier. And we're just going to get the factor X back to where we like it. For me, it's normally 0.45, not always, but it's normally around that type of sweet spot. And I'm going to scale this down a lot. The reason being because this chain is far too big. You might not realize it yet, but I'm going to bring in a PED right now and you'll see how big it is in comparison to the PED. So again, you can get these PEDs out of my Discord. If you're not in the Discord, go and join the Discord. The link's in the description. But we're going to import an OBJ of a GTA PED, which is going to let us basically size the model to be the right size. Now, even now, the chain is far too big, so I'm basically going to be moving it and scaling it, but what we also need to do is add a circle to curve it to. So we're going to do Shift and A, we're going to do curve, and we're going to do circle, and that's going to give us this. I'm going to scale it in to about his waist height so I can still see it. I'm going to bring it up to neck height. Then I'm going to scale it in some more, and then I'm going to get this chain basically roughly the right size, and I'm going to try and line it up with the actual circle itself. Now obviously it's up to you what size you make your chain. You might want to make it 10 times bigger, you might want to make it smaller, it's totally up to you, but I'm just getting it roughly how I want it, and then I'm going to move it in. So this first link is just on the circle like so. This isn't a necessary requirement, but I do like to do this. I find it makes the job easier. And also, if you wanted to make it a bit thicker, for instance, you could hit S for scale, Z for Z axis, and just make it thicker right now. Now we're going to add a modifier, we're going to add a deform, and we're going to add a curve. We're going to take the eyedropper and we're going to select the circle, and then you're going to see our chain is now going to link to that circle. So this circle is now going to be the control hub for actually shaping our chain. Now if we was to select the chain and go into edit mode, the chain's going to unravel like this. And if we select the circle and go into edit mode, the chain's not, and that's because we actually want to be editing the circle now, not the chain. And you can see we've got these points, these axes, which we're able to edit with, which we will get back to in a minute. I'm just going to show you, if you go back into object mode, if you select the circle and you move the circle will move. If you select the chain and move the chain, then the chain will move. But if we do want to move these, which we do right now, we're going to need to select both of them so they stay together. So we're going to shift select them, and we're going to basically rotate it. So we're going to look from this side, and we're just going to tip it up like this, just get it more of a kind of chain angle it would be at. Going to move it in a little bit and just get it something like this for now. Once we're done, we're going to select the circle and we're going to go back into edit mode. Now we're going to want to bring this in, so the first thing I'm going to do is look from the front, and I'm going to bring in the left side. I'm going to click on move, and I'm basically just going to move this along the x-axis like so, and do the same on the opposite side. And again, you're going to be wanting to look at this from square on, as well as looking at it from all angles at all times, just to make sure nothing's going through the model or whatever. Now, if we hit Control and T, this is going to be able to twist. So obviously the chain is very flat at the moment, we're going to want to twist it. So if we start with a basic twist like this, we'll be able to tweak individual parts after. Now if we come to the bottom one and we want to get that kind of weighted drop look, we're going to hit S to scale and we're going to move it in, and you're going to see you're going to start to get the V, which is more of a natural drop in chain. Now, if you move this up and down again, it's gonna help you to get more definition to your chain. It's gonna be a lot of tweaking for you with this, especially when it's your first chain or so. Like, it's gonna take a little while to get used to doing this, but it's actually not that bad. It's pretty easy once you learn how to do it. Now, I'm just going back into object mode. I'm just selecting them both and I'm just scaling it to make the chain a little bit smaller because I think it's far too big. I'm just gonna get it lined up as well as I can again. Little something like that. Then I'm going to select my circle and I'm going to go back into edit mode. Now this back one here, I'm going to select this and I'm going to twist it so it matches the neck profile a bit better. Going to move that in a little bit more so it's close to the neck. And this actually isn't too bad, to be fair, but we're going to do a little bit more. We're just going to tweak these slightly more, try and make them look a bit more natural. Now you are going to see that when we rotate these, they're probably going to start poking into the neck at the top, and that's basically because there's such a big gap between our twists that it's making that happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some more points. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to select the ones we want to make points between. So in this case it's going to be these three, and then we're just going to right click and we're going to hit subdivide, and that's going to give us an extra point in between each one. It will deform a little bit more when you do this, but now if I was just to twist this one, the new one for instance, you're going to see the chain is going to start looking a lot more natural. But as it is, I'm pretty happy with that, so for now I think we might just leave the chain like that. You will notice that in the middle at the bottom, like, it does look a little bit distorted where it bends like that. It doesn't really matter because we are going to be covering that up with a bail, but if you did mess around with it enough, you probably would be able to get it right. There might be some overlap here, so if we drop the count until there's a gap there and just go up one at a time like so, and then this has actually done it perfectly. But if yours isn't perfect, if you just hit S to scale, making sure you've only got the chain selected at this point, and you just move it, you'll be able to basically tweak it. If you hold shift, it will go slower, so just tweak it until it looks right and then let go. You don't want any links overlapping because it will just look terrible. I'm just going to go back in and I'm just going to twist this up a little bit because it didn't look too good. And again, I wouldn't worry too much about this distortion on the front because we are going to be putting a bow there to hang our pendant off anyway, so it's not really going to matter in the long run. But if you spend a lot of time like messing around with it, you will be able to get it to look better than that if you wish. Right, so for now, that is it for Blender. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and jump into Photoshop and we're going to start putting together a pendant. So once Photoshop's open, we're going to want to create a new project, and for this one we're going to use 4096 by 4096 at 300 pixels. We don't want to use the 2048 one for this because we want this to be as big as possible, because this isn't going to be the texture, this is just going to be our base canvas, what we're working with right now. Just going to go and close that. But yeah, basically we're going to want to get some images for our texture. Now I'm going to put you on here, guys. Basically I've got this website, it's called Krea.ai, and yeah, basically I'm going to show you can generate images on here so easy, so there's no point in stealing someone else's image or risking any IP strikes or anything like that. Basically we're going to come over here to the flux section and we're just going to type into here what we want. This is a great AI tool and I really suggest you use it. I'm not in any way sponsored by them, I just really like this tool, and yeah, it's great, so go use it. Now I'm going to type in Baby Biggie Smalls graffiti character holding an AK-47 and wearing a crown, and I'm going to hit generate, and you're going to see that it's going to generate images. These are completely AI generated images, they don't belong to anyone. So yeah, look, straight off the bat we've got some cool images here. I quite like this one, to be fair. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that image and I'm going to paste it into Photoshop. Now I'd done this at first, and then I've looked at it and I thought, do you know what, like, I really can't be bothered to go around the whole background and delete the background bit by bit. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna go back to AI and I'm gonna change my phrase, and I'm gonna tell it to give me a white background. And I'm gonna hit generate, and I'm gonna get some new results, and just like I asked it to do, it has given us the same things, slightly different of course, because each image is always gonna be different. It's gonna reinvent the image every single time, but it's given us a white background, which is gonna be a lot better for what we want to use it for right now. Gonna go ahead and paste that in, and then I'm gonna stretch it out so I can basically see it really well. And I'm just going to get rid of this shadow around the bottom. Now we don't need to be too fussy with this. I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool, I think it's called, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm cutting into the black a little bit here so that there's no white bits, and I'm just basically going to cut around the shadow just into his shoes, and then we're going to get rid of that shadow. That shadow is not going to look good for the actual pendant. We just want the image itself. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and remove this bit. So once we've selected all of that, I'm just going to hit delete. Now I can still see it because I've got this background here which I need to get rid of. In fact, let's just delete this all together. And then of course I want to get rid of the rest of the white, so I'm going to use the magic select tool, hit delete. Then there's just one more tiny bit between these legs here, so I'm just going to select that and delete that. There we go, nice and easy guys. Look at that, we have got exclusive one of a kind image for our pendant ready in literal seconds, like maybe minutes, but literal seconds. I'm just going to create a duplicate of that, and I'm just going to drag the layer down onto the plus sign. That's going to create a duplicate. Next we're going to come up here and we're going to go to image, adjustments and levels, and we want to make this completely black. So if we turn these sliders, you're going to notice it's going to change white or black, and yeah, basically we just want to black out the whole thing, and that's going to help us create an SVG for the image. So once that's done, we're going to export as a PNG. Now it'll probably be a good time to make a folder. We're going to need a folder for a chain, like we need a folder for anything we're making. So I'm just going to create a folder right now. If you do start the folder with dot or a dot or whatever, it's going to go to the top of the list, so it's going to be easier to find. That's a little trick that I always use. And inside the folder I'm going to create another folder called PNG. Or PNG SVG, and then I'm just going to give this a name. I'm probably just going to call it like something 1, or let's just call it Biggie 1 because we're going to have some letters too. So the next thing we need to do is we're going to want to add a stroke, and this is basically going to give us another layer around the outside like so. We do want it to be black, but if we turn it to red or a different color just so we can see how thick the edging is going to be, you've got to think about the pendant now, what it's going to look like. So we're going to have the image and then have a bit of diamonds around it. Once we're happy with the size, we're going to change that to black. We're going to hit OK, and we're going to go ahead and export as PNG again. And this time I'm just going to change it to Biggie 2. And hit save. Right, next we're going to want to work on some text. So I'm going to hide this. I'm going to bring back our actual image, and I'm just going to add some text to the image and basically kind of get a feel of what we want it to look like. Now I'm not going to be going crazy with the text on this one. I am going to be keeping this chain very simple. I have already recorded hours and hours of footage. I need to make this tutorial as short as possible because otherwise it's going to be like 5 hours long and people are just not going to want to watch it. So yeah, we're going to keep this nice and basic, but I'm going to type out notorious, and we're going to use that as our word because obviously it's Biggie. And I'm just going to scale this down, going to center this up a bit, and of course we're just going to want to go through, play with text sizing, font and whatever, like just get whatever you want your text to look like basically. So we're going to use this font. I know it's not the best font, but we're just going to use this one because it's nice and simple. I'm just going to get it roughly around where I want it to be, size it, And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to move it into the middle. I'm going to scale it up. I need to leave a bit of edging on the sides so that I can add the strokes afterwards, but I'm just going to get it roughly how I want it to look. Of course, I'm going to change it from orange to black, and yeah. Right, once you've got your first layer of text and you're happy with it, of course, we're going to export this as a PNG like we did before. And for this one, I'm just going to keep it simple and call it 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a stroke. This is the wrong layer. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to add a stroke to this. Of course, change the color. I'm going to be adding 2 levels of depth for this one, so I'm not going to make this first one too thick. And then I'm just going to black it out. And export this as a PNG again. And of course, I'm just going to call this one number 2. And then we're just going to basically up that stroke a bit more. So I'm going to bring it out to about here roughly, and the only thing is I'm going to need to black out the gaps in the middle of the O so they're solid on the model. So actually I need to go back and turn that into black. I've left it red. And then I'm just going to create another layer, and I'm going to select the color so it's the exact same black, and I'm just going to paint over these little gaps like so. And of course, I'm going to export this as a PNG and call this number 3. This is going to be the last one. So yeah, that's it. We're pretty much done with Photoshop for the minute. We will need it later, so we'll leave that open. And the next thing we're going to want to do is open up our Inkscape. Once we've done that, we're going to hit open, and we're going to locate our PNGs, what we just saved. Now we're going to need to open all of these, so we're going to go through them one by one and open them. So we're going to select the first one, we're going to hit open, we're going to hit OK. Once that opens, we're then going to go file, we're going to go open, and we're just going to repeat this process until we've opened every single one of the PNGs we just created. Now once we've done that, we're going to click on trace bitmap up here. We're going to select in the middle of the black, we're going to hit apply, and we're going to want to scroll into somewhere where the black is touching the line, somewhere like this. So if we hold control and roll our mouse wheel, we're going to basically zoom into wherever our mouse is. So aim for the line and then click outside of the area a little bit, and then move your mouse in slowly to get this cross arrow, hit select, hit delete. And that's basically going to clean up the whole image. It's going to take away any blurry bits and make it able to make a 3D model from. So we're going to go file, we're going to go save as, and we're just going to hit save. We don't need to do nothing else. That's going to save it as an SVG. And then we're going to X this one out because we've completed that one. And we're going to repeat the process for all the other ones. So again, we're going to do trace bitmap, apply, we're going to zoom in, we're going to click outside of the box, we're going to click close as we can there, hit delete, file, save as, save. And yeah, we're just going to keep doing that until we've done it for every single PNG, until they've all got SVGs. Now you might see with these letters that I actually chose to go to a different place because that's the closest place it is to the line, and that's basically what we're looking for. Right, so once they're all done, we can go ahead and close the last one, and let's go back into Blender. Now we're going to hide everything that we've already created. And we're going to want to basically import the SVGs now. I just want to show you that if you hit Shift and A, you can actually add text. And if you was to go into edit mode, you can obviously edit the text. And if you go down to the little A down here, you can change the font. So it is actually possible to do your text inside of Blender. However, I do prefer the SVG method because I can find this way a little bit problematic at times. And also if you wanted to paint something extra into the writing, like a funky background or something, it's not so simple. So yeah, we're going to go to File, Import, and we're going to go to SVG at the bottom. There is a SVG as grease pencil. We do not want that one. We want the SVG. And basically, if you don't have this SVG at the bottom, then you're going to need to enable it. And to do that, you're going to go Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, type in SVG up here, and you will see the Import, Export, Scalable Vector Graphics SVG here. You just need to tick that box, make sure it's ticked, and then close this window. Once that's done, we can go File, Import, SVG, and then we just need to locate our folder from before. And then you're going to see we've got all of these. Now, we're going to have to import these one by one. If they were OBJs, you could import all of them like this. It's not going to work, as you can see. Just thought I'd show you that. But yeah, if we delete that and then come back and basically just go through them one by one and just import them all. Like so. Now I'm just going to hide the actual biggie ones and only keep the text up for now. Now what we're going to want to do is separate these a bit. So we're going to click on the top one, I'm going to pull this up, and then I'm going to click on the next one, I'm going to pull that up some more, which is actually the bottom one. So I'm going to click on that one and put that one in the middle. Just going to get them up off the ground. It will enable us to zoom in a bit more and also just give us a bit of space between them so we can see what we're doing when we're picking them up. Now we need to add some depth to this, we need to add a thickness to this, and the way we're going to do it, we're going to come down to the data tab, going to click on geometry, and you're going to notice on here you've got extrude. If you grab this and drag it, you'll be able to change the thickness of it. You could also type a number in. If you go on to the depth one here, you're going to get this like balloon like style, but this does look cool. We're not going to be using this for now, but I do think that looks cool anyway, so you might want to use that yourself at some time. But yeah, don't click on the offset like I just did. Make sure to turn up the extrude and not the offset. So obviously you're going to get a thickness that you're happy with, and then we're going to need to repeat the process for all the other SVGs. Again, don't click offset like I just did again. Yeah, we all make mistakes. Right now, now that I've thickened them all up, I'm just gonna like move them together like this, start getting a kind of view of what we're gonna be looking at. Now, a lot of people just make it like this as it is right here, which I do too sometimes. I'm not a massive fan of just having the same thing all the time, so we are going to do something a little bit different for this one. But yeah, you could just have the triple layer like so, which is generally how people make their chains, but I'm going to show you another method in a minute anyway. But for now, I'm just going to be kind of just lining these up just to look like that. Right, so I'm going to click on the top one, I'm going to click add modifier, generate, and I'm going to realize that I haven't got everything, and the reason is because these are still SVGs. So if you select them all, right click and convert to mesh, they're now actual meshes, and we'll be able to add our modifiers. So I'm going to add a boolean, and I'm basically going to select the second one down. And what that's done is that's actually used the middle one to cut off from the top one. Now we're going to be using this a lot, but I'm not actually going to be using it like this in this one. So I'm going to basically get rid of that and redo it. So I'm going to do the middle one and use the top one to cut into the middle one. And that's going to give us like this kind of cutting effect that looks like this. The Boolean modifier is a great modifier. You should definitely play around with it, learn to use it, because it can really help you out with making chains. So definitely get to grips with using that. Now I'm going to turn off the texture for the bottom layer just so we can see a difference between them. I could leave this like this, but I don't want to. I actually just want to see the edging of the letters. So I'm going to apply this modifier, and then I'm actually going to move it down inside so we get that type of look. So yeah, that's going to show us like the outline of the letters, which I think is pretty cool. So we're going to leave that like that for now. We're going to need to bring back our biggies, and unfortunately I messed something up here, so I am just going to re-import them quickly. I didn't cut that out so you didn't like think, oh, why is that changed? So I'm basically just going to re-import these two biggies, and we're obviously going to thicken them up just like we did with the lettering. Now, once you have turned something to a mesh, you can delete these little white boxes, which will just basically, look, if you look with the biggie one, it's not a mesh yet, so when I hide it, it obviously hides it. But once it's converted to a mesh, you can delete those little white boxes and it will make your whole scene collection look better. But we're just gonna obviously extrude these and just get them looking kind of how we want them to look. Now I'm not going to be using the Boolean in a way that I cut this into the other one like I did with the lettering. I do always use a Boolean anyway, just to basically, I don't want a mesh going inside of a mesh. I want it to be completely parallel, cut off with it, and I use the Boolean modifier for that reason. But for the actual pendant, we're gonna try and basically make it the same type of height as the lettering now, so it looks right. So I'm just gonna be tweaking this, looking at it from the side, moving things up and down a bit, and just basically get the bottom and the top as well matched up as we can. So I'm just going to pull that top down a little bit, and you can see what I'm saying. I'm just trying to get it basically to be uniform size. And now we want to convert these both to a mesh. Again, we're going to select them, going to right click, convert to mesh. Very important you make sure you convert the things to a mesh, otherwise they will not be part of the actual object. And we're gonna do the Boolean this time. We're gonna do it the other way around, so that the bottom cuts off the back of the top that's basically hidden. And that's basically it for that. I'm just going to remove this material. One thing that I did realize around this time is that the program starts moving really slow. So I did go ahead and create a save file. The reason it started moving slow is because I hadn't applied the Boolean modifier. I do come back and do that after, but you might want to do it if your program starts moving slow. But for now, I'm just tweaking it a bit. I'm just looking at the ratio between the pendant and the text pendant, and just basically trying to get it to look how I want it to look on the chain. Now we can go ahead and delete those white boxes like I said before. Right, now if we come up here and we turn on statistics, we're gonna see our statistics up here. If we select an item, you're gonna be able to see obviously the size of the item in faces, triangles, edges, vertices, etc. The main ones we're going to be working with is the faces and the triangles, which I've highlighted here, and we're going to want to bring them down a lot, because if you look at the moment, the whole thing's like 128,000, which is a lot. So we're going to add a modifier, and actually this is where I realize I need to apply the Boolean modifier. We're going to add a modifier, generate decimate, and Normally I would show you to do this in 0.5 iterations, but I'm going to show you different here. I'm actually just going to use the whole scaler. We're going to use our eyes, and we're basically going to keep an eye on it, and we're going to move it down as much as we can without actually losing the shape. So as you can see, the more I bring it down, it's losing polys, and then obviously when you get too far, you lose the shape. So the idea is to get it down as much as possible without actually losing the shape. Now before we apply this, we basically just want to hit triangulate and then the drop down box and apply, and that's basically going to lock in our poly count. It's a lot lower now, but of course we're going to want to repeat this process for every single item. So make sure when you do this, you look at the edge, make sure you're not seeing like loads of loose vertices, or you got any like kind of weird bits popping out, or the shape's completely deformed. Again, you could just do it 0.5, apply it, 0.5, apply it, like I've shown you in previous videos, but you are able to play with a ratio and speed it up a bit as long as you keep your eye on the actual mesh itself. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead, we're going to decimate the crap out of this, and look, we've got it down to 14,000, like we've divided that by 10, that's great. Now if we come back up here and we go under here, we're going to check our face orientation. Now this is all blue, which is perfect. If anything was red on here, you're basically going to need to change the face orientation and flip the normals. If you do have anything red, then obviously go and watch this video that I've already made that teaches you how to do that. I don't have any on this video, so I'm not going to do it for the sake of it. So yeah, if you need to do that, then just go and check that video out. But yeah, we're all good, so we're going to turn that off and we're going to go to UV editing. Now just like with the chain link, we're going to need to UV map all of these parts. And the way I do it is basically, if we're looking at something square on like this, the one that's going to have the image on it, then I'm going to face project it because I want that to be perfectly square on. If you want to add things to every side and yet make it still uniform, like a diamond texture on the Notorious, then we're going to want to Q project it. That's basically going to put a flat surface of diamonds on every single face. So the two main ones you're always going to be using is project from view and Q projection. So I'm obviously going to Q project this part, I'm going to move it down here. Now we're soon going to be running out of space on this UV map, so we are going to want to check it all and make sure that we've basically got everything in without overlapping each other. So I'm actually going to move these parts outside of the island because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to place them at guesswork right now without putting it on top of something because they're reasonably big. So I'm just going to move these outside. That doesn't matter because once we select everything, we're going to hit tab, go all, and now we can basically see everything. The only thing is I have hidden the chain, so if I unhide the chain and then basically repeat the same process, we're going to be able to see the chain links on the UV map as well. Like so. Now a lot of these things could be scaled down, to be honest. This chain link could definitely get scaled down, and we could create some room for everything else. But yeah, we basically just want to find everything its own little home on the texture map so that when we create our texture, it's nice and easy. This is definitely a big upgrade since the original video we put out. In that one we just brought a texture in and tried to fit things onto the texture, but in this one we're going to be actually creating a custom UV map. We're going to be importing that into Photoshop, and then we're going to add our texture in there exactly where we want it to be. Now we are going to want to leave a little bit more room because we haven't actually created a bail yet. So we're going to want to create a bow that's basically going to connect the chain to the pendant. So obviously we're going to want to UV map that as well. So let's start getting this pendant into position. We're going to RX 90 it to basically flip it up 90 degrees, and we're going to scale it, we're going to move it, and we're just basically going to get it in the right position. Nah, I strongly suggest you spend a lot of time tweaking this, like I have. At the end of the day, like, your chain's only gonna look as good as the time and effort you put into it. I would say finding symmetrical points and making sure everything's squared up nicely is very important. So don't be afraid to spend a lot of time like just tweaking things and getting it right. There's no rush, and at the end of the day, your final product's only gonna be as good as the effort that you've put in to make it. Right, next we're gonna be creating a bail. We're only gonna be creating a basic bail. If you want to make a more complex one and you basically want to do a nice one, then go watch this video that I created before. This will show you how to make like really nice complex bails, but for this one we're just going to be creating something nice and simple. So we're going to add a cylinder and we're going to up the vertices to around 50. That's going to give us a nice round cylinder. And then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees on the X, 90 degrees on the Z to get that round the right way. And then of course we're going to scale it and then scale it down a load. Again, we're just going to be tweaking it, moving it into position, rotating it, scaling it, doing everything we need to do to get this roughly to the right area and how we want it to look. I'm probably gonna scale this up on the Z axis a bit just to kind of give it a bit more of an oval shape. Obviously you're gonna need to rotate it so it looks like it drops nicely with the chain and the bell. Now it's totally up to you if you want the bail to be basically hanging onto the pendant. I'm going to be creating a little couple of bars that go through the bow and lock onto the pendant, but of course it's up to you how you want to do it. But for now I'm just going to be getting this bow right. So once I've got this roughly where I want it to be, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to carve a shape for the middle of it, and obviously we're going to use the boolean for that. But to do that, what we're going to need to do is we're going to want to duplicate this one. So to duplicate something, you hit Shift and D, and we're basically just going to move that to the side on the X axis, and then we're going to look at it from the X side, and then we're just going to scale it ever so slightly. That's just going to give us a vision of basically how big the hole will be in the middle. Going to hide the chain. So I can see that's pretty good. So I'm just basically now going to extrude this all the way along the X axis so it goes straight through the middle nicely. And then of course we're going to make a boolean, and we're going to go through the middle, and I've done the wrong bit. So I'm going to cancel that boolean. I'm going to select the right part and then boolean it this way. I always get the booleans back to front. It don't really matter at the end of the day. If you see it hasn't worked, then just select the other part and boolean the opposite part. But yeah, like you can see, we've created a nice little loop bail. Just gonna do a little bit more tweaking to it. Now I want to create a bit more style to this, so I'm going into edit mode. I'm clicking edges, and I'm basically going to hold Alt and Shift, and I'm going to select this outside edge all the way around. Once I've done that, I'm going to hit Shift and D to duplicate the edge. And then I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to do separate by selection. That's going to give us an extra edge, which you can see here. Now you might just want to check that there ain't no gaps in this. And then once we're happy with it, we're going to select it and we're going to convert it to a curve. Now we're going to go to the data tab. I'm going to unhide the bow so we can see what we're doing here. Now if you see we change the extrude, that's not what we want this time. It's the opposite way to doing the letters. So just going to zero that back out. And we're just going to change the depth. Now that's going to give us like a bubbled edge, like so. And it's just basically going to give us a bit more definition to the bow than just having a plain old oval. Just going to change the resolution. The resolution basically just makes it more round and less jagged. And then I'm just going to duplicate that and drag it along the x-axis so there's one on each side. Just going to check that looks okay from both sides. And bring back our chain. Now this is where I want to put the bar. You might still want to do a little bit more tweaking. I mean, to me it looks like I do need to move this a little bit, so I probably am just going to play around with it a little bit more until I'm happy with it. I'm going to go ahead and add another cylinder, and I'm going to rotate this like I did before. X-axis, Z-axis, both 90 degrees. I'm going to scale this one down a lot. I'm going to stretch it out some on the X, scale it down some more, and some more. Again, I'm going to stretch this out longer on the X-axis. Going to move this inside the bow. Just going to get it sitting somewhere where it would naturally be, because obviously the weight would be pulling it to the bottom. And we're going to extend that a bit more. Now I kind of want it to be here so that the points of the crown will receive the other bars, but of course that does make it look a little bit off center, so I might need to do a bit more tweaking in a sec. But I'm basically going to duplicate this and I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to create two of these down bars basically going down into the pendant. I'm just going to rotate this. I'm going to look at it from the x-axis, and I'm actually going to turn on x-ray mode so I can see where the center of the other bar is. And I'm just going to move this over so it's in the right position. Once I'm happy with that, I'll turn off the x-ray. And then I'm just going to duplicate this again, move it over on the x-axis, and that's us. Yep, that is looking great. Now it does look off center like I mentioned before, so I am gonna have to tweak this a little bit to make that look right. Just gonna pull that down a little bit. And then I'm going to want to move this, but unfortunately it hasn't been joined to the side parts yet, and the side parts also haven't been converted to a mesh. So I'm going to select them all. I'm going to move it slightly. And I'm going to stretch it out a bit more on the X. Just keep tweaking it until it looks right. Now I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to do convert to mesh. Then I'm going to select the middle part with them and I'm going to do join. And that's going to join them all together. And then for these three parts down here, I'm going to select all three of them. And then I'm going to join those together too. Now I probably want to create a boolean so that they're not going inside of our actual pendant, but they're cut off on the surface. And we can see that's worked. I'm just going to check our face orientation again, just to make sure nothing's gone red. And that's all good, so we're going to turn that back off. Now, last thing we need to do before we go back to Photoshop, we just need to UV map these new parts that we've added. So we're going to do the same sort of thing as before. We're just basically going to project them. We're going to move them off the screen, and then we're going to obviously select the whole object. Now we just need to find some homes for these, so I'm going to select these and I'm going to scale them down and move them around. Now I could put this on top of here because I know that I want them both to have diamonds on them, but I'm actually going to shrink this down. And I'm just going to move things around a bit more, try and get a bit better housekeeping and try and basically fit everything in. And that's looking good. That is basically all of our parts on the UV map. Pretty happy with that. So yeah, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a save file. We're basically going to hit Control and S, or you might want to do save as, that's totally up to you. Now I'm just going to go to the chain, I'm going to apply these two modifiers, and then I'm going to delete the circle. And then I'm going to delete the ped as well. Just double check before we delete it that everything looks right, because obviously we won't be able to see afterwards, but once we're happy with that, I'm going to delete the ped. Go back to UV editing, make sure everything's selected. Gonna get the UV map back up like so, and then I'm gonna select UV and then come to the bottom, export UV layout, and yeah, basically just gonna create a folder called UV and go inside that folder and save this. Now it should save as 2048 because that's the size we created it at, and that is the size we want it to be. If you make it much bigger, you might cause it to be too big of an item. If you make it much smaller, then you might make it not a very good item. So it's all about balance. So we're just going to go ahead and open this UV map inside Photoshop, and as you can see, we can now see all the islands of where our things are that we need to texture. So I'm going to create basically another layer, and I'm going to paint it red and move it behind, just so that we can see everything a bit more clearly. You can obviously use any color. This color is not going to be on the end result of the texture. Just like this. Now I can see the edges, that's pretty well lined up, to be fair, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'll probably leave that one like that. Right, next we want to add a diamond texture to our link. So I've actually got a diamond texture here, so I'm probably just going to paste that in. Of course, you can get your textures from wherever you wish. I would strongly suggest Googling textures. If you're looking for a specific texture, Google Images is full of them. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to drag it down here below the image texture. I'm going to select this box, and I'm just going to paint this bit black because I want the edging of that notorious to be black. I'm going to deselect that, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste in a texture. This is a diamond texture I got off one of my friends, Abe. Shout out Abe. but you can obviously get these things off of Google, whatever. So I'm going to turn the opacity down, and I don't want these to be square, I want them to be like going diagonal. So I'm going to hit Ctrl T to transform. I'm going to shape it down a bit, rotate it, and just basically tweak it to however I want it to be. Don't worry too much that like this is overlapping the one at the top at the moment, because I'm going to cut that off in a minute. But once I'm happy with it, it is covering the link. I'm going to turn the opacity back up, and I'm basically just going to trim off the part that's overlapping like so. I have actually gone a little bit too far with that one, so I'm just going to hit Ctrl Z, and I'm just going to trim that off slightly higher up. Right, so if we drag this above the actual UV layer and we do create a clipping mask, then you're going to see that it's basically going to get rid of anything that's outside of the UV mapping. So next I'm going to open up a new page, and I create custom textures myself. Basically define custom patterns is the right terminology. So I'm just going to paste in a load of pattern that I've already got here, that I already have pre-programmed into my Photoshop. You can of course just get a picture of this texture or whatever you want to do, and then I'm going to paste this in like so, and I'm going to drag this down for the minute. Now the only things that I don't want this covering is the black, the biggie smalls, and the diamonds that are on the link. Everything else I want covered in diamonds. So I'm basically going to cut around this link, and I'm going to go here. I'm going to make a duplicate of this. I'm going to drag this up to the top, and I'm going to basically create a square box around this because it'll just be a bit cleaner. And yeah, that's so. I'm just going to delete that part, and basically there we go. That's basically what we want from our texture. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a DDS. Again, you might not have DDS on your Photoshop. It's probably because you don't have the plugin. If you just Google DDS plugin for Photoshop, there'll be one out there. But once you've got that, we're just going to save this as a DDS. Alternatively, you can use Convert.io to convert your PNG to DDS, but I do find having a free plugin for Photoshop works a treat. There's actually two that I've got. I've got the normal one and I've got the NVIDIA one. So yeah, you can get them for free. It is nice and simple. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to merge all of these layers apart from the image of Biggie, and we're going to basically be creating our 3D map. So to create a 3D map, what I want to do is for the diamond part, I want to open up levels, and I basically want to make a big difference between the blacks and the whites before I make my bump map. And this is going to basically make the bumps on the map be more defined. Obviously the texture is not going to look like this. This is just for the bump map itself. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go filter, 3D, generate normal map. And just make sure these are all on max for the diamonds, and do save, and we've got that. Now we need to go back onto layers, and we need to do a similar thing for the Biggie character. So again, we're going to go 3D, generate normal map, and the differences for this one is basically we're going to turn the blur up. If you did want some 3D definitions on your character, then by all means just do it normally, but I want mine to be smooth, so I'm going to be basically turning up the blur. And when I click on the layer and back on, this is the result. So yeah, we've got a custom normal map as well as a custom texture. We're just going to need to obviously export this one or save this one as a DDS file as well. And then we can go back to Blender. Alright, so we're going to need to add the material. So first thing we're going to do, now if you come up here, if you do get confused, you can rename these things. So obviously like this says cylinder, which is now our bale. So we can obviously just rename these if you choose to. It might help you basically figure out which part's which. For me, I don't really need to do this. I'm just kind of showing you how to do it in case you do need to. But just bear that in mind. You could do this from the start. Obviously, when you make your chain, it will be called cube. So you might want to change that to chain. But yeah, if you want to go through them all and change them. But once we're done that, we're going to select each one. We're going to go to materials tab, and we're basically going to create a new material. We're going to have image texture. We're going to do open, and we're going to open our diffuse texture. And that's going to basically overlay onto the chain. There is a little bit of weird definition there, but you're probably not going to notice that from far out, and I'm not going to bother tweaking it right now. You could remap that a little bit better, to be honest. But yeah, we're just going to be getting on with it. So we've got this material 002. I'm going to actually rename this to big mat for biggie material. And then we're basically going to go through each one now, click, and we're going to select big mat. So we're going to be adding the texture, the same texture to every single item that makes up the chain, like so. Basically saves you like doing the whole process of adding a new texture, image texture, finding that image. You can basically just copy this one texture onto everything like this. Just make sure every single one has got it, and make sure you've only got one texture, because otherwise you're going to encounter some crazy problems. But as you can see, like everything is on there, and it is on there nice. I could add it to the UV map if I need to. I don't need to, but obviously if I wanted to tweak anything, I could obviously just do it like that and move things around a bit more. But yeah, it's come out pretty good, guys. Pretty happy with how it's looking. So basically we're now just gonna join it all together. We're gonna select everything, we're gonna right click and say join, or we could hit Control and J when everything's selected. That would also join it. I'm just gonna delete that extra part we don't need in the scene selection. Just gonna have a little inspection of this. Now again, that is a little bit distorted, but it is the only bit, and that is purely because that chain link's twisted. I could UV map and just face project that one and put it straight, but honestly you're not gonna see that in game. You're gonna be too far away to even notice. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go file, export as OBJ. We're going to go to our file system, and we're going to create a new folder and call it OBJ. So before you save it, make sure the chain's selected. You're going to click selected only. You might want to call it something, biggie for instance, and then you're just basically going to save it. Right, and that is us done with Blender, guys, for now. Control and S to save, and we're going to close that out. We're going to close Photoshop, we'll minimize it, and we're going to open up 3ds. Now again, if you haven't got the GIMP's Evo plugin for 3ds, then go and watch this video. But once you have, you're going to click on this little door with the arrow here. You're going to have this pop up, and you're going to do import. Now we're going to be importing a GTA skeleton, which is available in my Discord if you don't have one. If you are in a Discord, then you probably already got one. If you're not, then go and join it. The link's in the description. But we're basically going to import the skeleton. Don't worry about this report, it's purely because of skeleton, and we're basically just going to minimize this. Don't close it. We're going to select our front face, and we're going to zoom in. This is a bit like Inkscape, it's going to zoom in where the mouse is. And we're going to select this chain. Now you might not have scene selection, you might have scene selection, it might be on the left, it might be on the right, but if you haven't got it, click on this little box, and then once you've got it, we're going to expand everything, and we're going to select the low and the medium. And we're just going to hit delete to get rid of those, and then we're going to select this chain, we're going to do file, we're going to do import, and we're going to find out OBJ. Right, now there is an error, and I've left this error in this video on purpose because everyone keeps asking me, how do you fix this error? Now the reason is we didn't clean up our mesh in Blender. So if we come back to Blender, we're going to select our mesh, we're going to go tab to edit mode, we're going to make sure everything's selected, so hit A, make sure everything's selected, we're going to go into mesh, we're going to go clean up, and we're going to do delete loose. You're going to see it's removed 2 vertices, 2 edges. That is now going to solve that problem. So anyone that gets that issue, doesn't know how to solve it, is in the frequently asked questions in the Discord, but some of you lot don't look in that channel, so I've made sure to include that in this video, so now you know how to do it. So I'm just going to delete the OBJs we already saved, I'm going to resave this and then re-import it into 3ds once again. Alright, so once we fix that issue, we're going to come back to 3ds, of course, make sure our chain's selected, going to go File, Import, Import, and import our OBJ as we did before. Now you're going to see, now that we've fixed the issue, it's going to load in, we're not going to have any issues there, so that's fine. So we're going to select this chain, we're going to go to our command panel, we're going to select this box here, going to go to editable mesh, going to click on attach, and then we're just going to click on our chain, going to click OK. That's going to attach that chain to that chain. So next we want to click this element box. Going to click on the old chain. Going to click select ID. And we're going to hit the... Okay, so the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up what glows in the dark and what doesn't glow in the dark with our material IDs. You can have multiple IDs if you wanted to have, maybe, I don't know, glow in the dark, non-glow in the dark, and then have some bits sparkly, some bits metallic. Like, you could set multiple IDs if you want. For this tutorial we're going to be working with the 2 main IDs, which is going to be glow in the dark and non-glow in the dark. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make everything glow in the dark, because I feel like I'm going to make the whole chain glow in the dark, and then I'm just going to make the picture and the black edging not glow in the dark. So because the majority is one thing, we're going to select all of that. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to turn around to the back, and I'm going to select everything like that. Now you'll see we're already set to ID 2, so ID 2 is automatically going to be our glow in the dark. So what we're going to need to do is scroll down, we're going to click on color, and I'm just going to bring these settings into screen so you can see them. So those are the numbers we're going to be working with for glow in the dark and non-glow in the dark. These are available in my Discord, but obviously I've put them on the screen so you could take a quick picture if you need them for later reference. But because this is glow in the dark, we're going to want to change these settings here. So it's going to be 255, 186, and then 255. And hit OK. We're going to get this pink color. This pink color is the indicator that is set to glow in the dark color. And we're just going to change this illumination down to 0. Now the whole chain is set to glow in the dark, we just want to select the bits we don't want to glow. So if we use this tool at the bottom, it does help us to zoom in and out a bit more. And now I just want to select the biggie, and I'm gonna hold shift. and select the black area. So now we've got them, we just basically want to click this so they turn to ID1, and we want to change the settings for ID1. So the ID settings for non-glow in the dark is 255, 128 and 0. And we're going to see that turns orange. Now it might look like this for now, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's purely because we haven't added our materials yet. Now I'm going to click up here on standard and I'm going to change it to high quality. And the last thing before we put our actual material on, we just need to actually weight the chain so that it is fixed to the ped and so that it doesn't fly around in game. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to click on skin. And we're going to click edit envelopes, vertices. Going to select everything like that. Going to change that to spline 3. And if we scroll down, we'll find this wrench icon. And we just basically want to turn this to 1. Okay, so that is everything done for that. Now we just need to add our materials. So we need to bring back up the GIMS pop-up. And we're going to click on material editor. Right now you're going to see our ID1, our ID2. Sometimes you might have extra IDs. I'm not entirely sure why these come up. I don't know if it's something to do with the skeleton or what, but if they do, just ignore them. Only focus on the ones that you've done. So we're going to start with ID1, which is our non-glow. So I'm going to open that up. And I'm going to click on this pink circle here. Now for non-glow, we want it to be ped and we want the parameter to be ped. So that's like that. And as before, when I showed you that sheet, I'm going to show you again. There's going to be some settings what we're going to put into these materials. Now first we're going to need to add our textures, so we're going to click on bump and this is going to be our normal map. So we're going to click on here, we're going to go to our folder and we're going to add our normal map. Going to make sure that's embedded. For diffuse, it's going to be our actual texture. And we're going to click embed on that as well. And then we've got our specular. Now I've added a specular to the folder system. The speculars are available in the Discord. Again, the link's in the description. But we're going to need to add a specular, which I've already added to the folder system for my chain. I normally copy this into every folder just so it's easier to locate. Otherwise you have to go out of that folder and then go back in, and it's kind of a long thing. So I've added a specular to the folder. So now we just need to select that. Again, make sure that's embed. Right, now we need to change a couple of these settings. Now, because this is the no glow, we're going to change the bumpiness to 4.0, which is actually sliding the scaler all the way up. We're going to change the specular fall off, and that's going to be 512. Which again is sliding it all the way up. For the Fresnel, we want it to be 1.0. Again, you can just slide that up. And for the intensity, we're going to slide it all the way down, and it's going to be 0. Now, you need to always go into this wind at the bottom. And we basically need to zero out all of these. Now that won't actually turn to 0 if I slide it. Oh, it does actually. Sorry, you need to. You need to slide it to the right a bit and then slide it to the left for it to work. Okay. So basically we need to turn these all to 0. And that's going to stop, again, like wind affecting the chain in game and stop it from moving around. But this is the ID1 setup, so that's fine. Next we're going to move on to ID2. And you're going to see when you click this, you're going to have this. So we're just going to select yes. And then this time, because it's glow in the dark, we're going to need to select PED. And we're going to want to select PED emissive. Now the texture settings on here, obviously the first images are going to be the same, but some of these are going to be different. So again, we need to select our bump, embed, diffuse, I'm actually finding that if you double click on the image it seems to work, but when I'm clicking open it's not working for some reason. So if you do get stuck like that, just do that. Again, make sure it's embed. Okay, so that part's all the same apart from the PED emissive. Now these are going to be different. So because we want this to sparkle, so we want to get like the VVS kind of look to it, so we're going to change some of these settings to make that happen. Now for this one it's going to be 1.081. For the specular fall off, it's going to be 1997.0. For the Fresnel, it's going to be 0.45. And for the intensity, it's going to be 1. So just slide that one all the way up. Again, we're going to need to change the wind. And that's it for the materials. So basically now we're good to export it. So we're going to locate our Biggie folder and we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it 3ds export. We're going to open that folder and hit select folder. And we're just going to hit continue. And then we're going to wait. Might take some time. This could take an hour. This could take 5 minutes. It depends on how big your chain is, how well your computer is and stuff like that. I don't think this chain is going to take very long. I don't have a bad computer and it's pretty low poly. So this is going to probably work quite quick, but yours might take up to an hour. So don't be scared if like after half an hour is still not done. But yeah, I think we're pretty much almost done here and we are completed. Once we get back to this stage here, we are finished and that is fully exported. So we're going to go back to our desktop and you might see that some of the icons have changed just because I had a problem with recording and I've had to record this part again. So for now we're going to be using the Biggie folder and the OpenIV. So I'm going to open both of them up and split the screen. Now we're going to need to go into our mods folder and we're going to need to make sure we select edit mode. Again, you might notice I already have a folder called Biggie because the recording messed up. So I am just going to create a new folder and I'm just going to call it Big. Now, if we go to our 3ds export folder. Now, I don't know what happened there. I think when I was exporting it, for some reason, it froze a little bit and I think it exported it into this folder and not into this folder. So I have just dropped those files back into this folder where they should be. And basically we're looking for this ODD file. So we're just going to drag and drop that into our OpenIV. And then Open Formats is going to come up and it's basically going to convert it into a YDD. If we click on that, we can see it, and yeah, it's nice. Now we do need to add a texture dictionary, a YTD file. The best way to do this is just to copy one in from something else and then just change the image into it. It's so easy. So if you do have a file already, then we can just copy the texture dictionary and change the image in it. If you don't have one, then head over to the Discord. Again, link is in the description and we can provide you one of them, no problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into one of my folders that already has a texture dictionary, and I'm just going to copy it into this one. Now, of course, I have copied this from the other biggie, so it is already the right image. However, if it wasn't, we would open this up, we will click replace, and we will select our texture, hit open, and then we'll just hit save. Now, the next thing, obviously, we're going to be putting into a test server. This is going to vary how you're going to name your files. Mine are going to be named like this. Yours will probably be very similar. The number might be different depending on how many objects you've already got in your game. If you give it to a server to put in for you, they're probably going to name it completely different, because chances are they've probably got a YMT folder and there'll be some other parts in here. But this is kind of a basic standard naming format for files that are going into GTA. So mine's going to be named like this, but of course you're going to need to name yours how they need to be to go into your server. Now, obviously the last one I put in was number 12, so I'm just going to change this to a 13. And then of course I need to copy in the YDD name as well. So yeah, those are standard names. They're not for any special file system or anything like that, other than I'm up to 13 in how many chains are in my server right now. So if it's your first chain, you might want to call it 000. I'm not going to be showing you how to basically set up folders for test servers and stuff today, because that's not what this tutorial is about. But once you've got these, should you have your test server set up, which obviously if you don't, you can go and follow the videos below and you can go and set yourself up a test server, and then you'll be able to drop these in and try them out for yourself. So yeah guys, that's it, we're pretty much finished. So now I'm just going to put this into my test server and I'm going to show you the result in game. So there we have it guys, the finished result in game. We've got a VVS diamond sparkling away. I'm just going to play with the lighting a little bit, show you the glow in the dark effect. But yeah, that is it guys. I hope this tutorial has helped you. I hope this is going to help you further progress your 3D modeling journey. If you need any further support, don't forget the link for the Discord is in the description. Don't hesitate to click that and join the community. Until the next one, this is Drills, over and out. Peace.